What's going on, everybody? Jarrett with Jarrett Rushing Fishing, and as you can see, I'm here at my house on a beautiful spring day. This is live, so if you hear a bee in the background like that one right there, if you hear chickens, if you hear the wind, if you hear a truck come by, hey, this is all live. I'm gonna try to do this in one take, that way we don't have a lot of footage, a lot of different things going on. But anyhow, thank you so much for coming back to this channel. If you don't mind, a few housekeeping items right off the bat. If you're not a subscriber, make sure you click the subscribe channel. We're getting so close to 1,000 viewers, 1,000 subs, I mean, and we really want to hit that 1,000 mark by the end of the year. Right now, I think we're about 300 and some odd away, so make sure you share this video with your friends, tell them to subscribe. You know, everything that y'all do helps us out tremendously, and we're able to put out content like this. Secondly, I do apologize. This is another Greers Ferry video, and behind this one, you're going to get 3 more. That's right, you're going to get a TBF practice, a TBF day 1, and a TBF day 2. So I apologize for all the Greers Ferry, but luckily after this Greers Ferry run through here, we are going to get into the wonderful world of Lake Dardanelle. We're going to get in the world of Dumas, Pendleton on Arkansas River. We've got some Millwood coming up, and if you haven't heard, I qualified for Lake Eufaula, Oklahoma as well in June, so we're going to have some out-of-state stuff coming. But without further ado, as you saw on this is the Mr. Bass of Arkansas recap and tips and tricks for Greers Ferry. Now, I combined both of these, and it's kind of funny that I did, because let's go ahead and kill the pink elephant in the room. I stunk it up on the Mr. Bass of Arkansas tournament on Greers Ferry. I weighed in 2 piddly bass. To put that in perspective, out of all of the anglers that actually weighed in fish, I was dead last. I weighed in 2 fish. I think I finished 80-something, 90-something, somewhere in there. But I did move up in Angler of the Year points. Now, let's go ahead and kind of start at the beginning, okay? At the beginning, we fished BFL on Saturday. So on Thursday, I was able to take a day off, go up and practice a little bit. And I found some fish that were on the upper end of the lake getting ready to spawn. They were black bass, largemouth that is. And I thought that I had a pattern that I could go catch 7 to 9 pounds, and if I lucked up and got a kicker, I could be in that 10-11 pound range. That's kind of where my mind was at. Friday, before the tournament, a front moved through, and it blitzed the air temperature by about 30 degrees, blitzed the water temperature by about 5 degrees, and all the fish that I was on, it pulled them out. Now, I was on a hard power fishing pattern, a crankbait, a jig, and a spinnerbait. Those are my 3 go-tos. I was putting my head down. I was throwing a Arky 350. I was throwing a Bandit Series 200. I was throwing an Arky football jig, and I was throwing a Brazalo 3/8 ounce custom-made spinnerbait. I mean, 100% exactly what I was throwing all day during that practice. You can go back and look at that video if you'd like and just check those baits out. However, on the day of the tournament, the BFL that is, I realized that things had changed. And whenever the water temperature on Greers Ferry changes, I typically downsize my bait. So I went with old tried and true, trusty, if you will, Arky stick rigged on a 1/16 ounce dead stand-up finesse head. And I caught, on BFL that is, 7 keepers, and my 5 best were right at 7 pounds. On Mr. Bass of Arkansas, the only way I could get bit was doing the exact same thing. And check out these clips of the 2 keepers that I caught during that day. Number 1. Ain't special. Shallow. And there's 3 boats back there, so I mean, if y'all head back there, you'll probably waste some time, to be honest.
Probably won't. Appreciate it.
No problem. Well, I got 2 now.
you go. Just like school, you always got fish.
You know, right now, I only got 2 in the live well. I'll take 5 of them. Telling you, man, Greers ain't supposed to be this difficult. So what you saw right there was me struggle all the way up until I caught those 2 fish. Those fish came at 10:30 and 11 o'clock respectively in the morning. I thought that maybe I could put together a pattern that would be good enough for 6.5 pounds or so. But I knew that by doing that, I didn't stand a chance to cash a check, to win, to do anything. So I actually ditched all of that, and I picked up that Brazalo spinnerbait. I went to the bushes on the main lake, and I started beating the bushes to death. Did not pay off for me on this particular Sunday, and I hated that, but that was just a gamble that I took, and I gambled wrong. So a lot of people ask, well, why didn't you go to the south end? Why didn't you go to the north end? I think this is a perfect segue into tips and tricks of Greers Ferry. A YouTube subscriber, and I apologize, I don't have the guy's name right here in front of me, but here recently a YouTube subscriber requested a tips and tricks for Greers Ferry. So, hey, this is kind of what we're going to go with. So what you have to understand about Greers Ferry is it is 2 lakes. You have the upper lake and you have the southern lake that is separated by the Narrows Canal. Now, I know that it's all still continually one lake, but they fish eerily similar, but completely different at times. The upper lake is highly affected by running water, water coming in. It will muddy up. You'll have floaters. You have different stained colored waters, whereas the southern end of the lake is almost primarily continually clear. Now, I know there's some pockets and some creeks in there that will muddy up at times, but for the most part, the southern end of the lake is completely clear. Also, the species composition is a little bit different. On the upper end of the lake, you're going to catch more largemouth and spotted bass than you are smallmouth. However, on the southern end of the lake, you're primarily going to catch smallmouth and spotted bass over your largemouth. Now, I'm not saying that you can't intermix, because as you'll see in the TBF tournament videos, I was on the upper end of the lake catching smallmouth on a Ned rig setup, just similar to the Arky stick. However, those videos will come out later. So I guess from a tips and tricks standpoint, what you have to do is decide first off whether you're going to fish the lower end or the upper end, and tailor your bait choices and tailor your fishing techniques based on which species you're going to go after. Second off, and I can't stress this enough, water temperature and water clarity play a humongous factor on Greers Ferry. This time of year, March to May, the ideal water temperature is 58 to 62 degrees. If you can get that magical 4-degree mark right there, all of the fish are aggressive. They're biting heavily. They're pre-spawn, they're post-spawn, and everything in between. So the 58 to 62 degree mark is whenever you're going to catch the majority of your fish. Now, I'm not saying you can't catch them at 54, and I'm not saying you can't catch them at 64, but it seems to me that 58 to 62 is magical. So what I look for whenever I go to Greers Ferry is really dependent on which end I'm going to fish, but we'll just stay on the upper end because that's where I spent most of my time this spring. So what I was looking for, first and foremost, is channel swings with humongous chunk rock boulders. I'm not looking for, chunk rock. I'm looking for, humongous boulders. Seemed like the fish that I was catching were hiding around those boulders a lot better than they were sand flats, gravel flats, peat gravel flats, things of that nature. Now, I also caught fish, much like my buddy John from Mongo Fishing, which I know you'll see in his videos, caught fish on brush tops, not submerged, but flooded brush. Which brings me to my third tip of the lake is you need to look at what the water level is. So right now, the water level on Greers Ferry is about 3 foot high or so, which whenever the water gets that high, the bushes are 2 foot deep in the water. Typically, they're out of the water 3 foot, they're usually 2 foot deep. The fish will move in and push back into those bushes. They will sit in there and they will spawn, they will do their thing, and they will basically live. They will set up shop, set up shelter in those bushes for the duration that the water is up in there. Now, you got to watch if the water is rising or falling as well. But those are the 2 things that I really look for. Again, bushes and channel swings that have big chunk rock boulders, huge boulders. Something else to look for, and it sounds kind of funny because this lake is wide open, but it's pinch points. Now, what I'm talking about a pinch point is where a lake kind of comes together and then turns around and gets wide again. So areas where the water skinnies up a little bit. And whenever I say that, you got to think outside the box. I'm not talking about skinnies up to the point that you can only drive a boat through there. I'm saying skinnies up maybe from 1.5 miles all the way across the lake to, you know, 1/4 of a mile, which is still plenty wide enough to drive several boats through. And then it opens back up again. You start looking for those things, and you're going to concentrate more heavily on the bass. From a lure standpoint, again, it really depends on what species that you're targeting. But if I were going today, and although I don't throw all of these baits exclusively, if I were going today, these are the baits that I would have on my deck. I would have a Brazalo 3/8 ounce spinnerbait with a white willow leaf and a red Colorado kicker with a white skirt on it. I would have a albino bone shad colored jerkbait. I would have a green pumpkin brush hog for flipping in the bushes. I would have 2 different Ned setups, one with a TRD and one with an Arky stick. I would have a crawdad colored Arky 350 based on what the stain of the water is, because if you're on the upper end and it gets more stained, then fish will typically hit something red a little bit more than they will in that clear water. Or at least that's my experience. Let's see, I would have a football or finesse jig by Arky. Let's see, I feel like I'm missing one in there. I feel like I'm missing something. Oh, square bill. This time of year, you can't go wrong with a square bill, especially if you find that muddy and stained water. Again, shad colored or crawdad colored. Excuse me, I'm kind of fighting a cold here, but either one's really, you know, wide open. Just take your pick. But those are some tips and tricks for Greers Ferry from the months of late March all the way up until middle of May. Is number 1, water clarity. Number 2, water temperature. Number 3, water height. And then find a particular type of structure that you can replicate at different spots on the lake, whether it be flooded brush, chunk rock boulders, pinch points, mouths of coves, docks, you know, sand flats, peat gravel flats. I mean, you got to experiment on your own to figure out exactly what those fish are doing. But I hope this is good enough for y'all, kind of to get you started. For those of y'all that have not ever fished Greers Ferry, I will tell you, Greers Ferry is probably, in my opinion, one of the most underestimated lakes in the state of Arkansas. It is absolutely loaded with fish. There's all 3 species. There's big fish in this lake too. Shoot, at the TBF just this past weekend, we had my buddy Matt Wood weighed in almost an 8-pounder for a big bass, and that is a post-spawn fish. Post-spawn 7-pounder, so you can only imagine what it would have been pre-spawn. I hope you enjoyed this. Again, like I talked about at the front of the video, if you're not a subscriber, make sure you hit that subscribe button, click the notification so you know when we're coming with a new video. We will be coming with, again, another practice video and then 2 more tournament videos from Greers Ferry before we get on the Arkansas River and some more muddier water holes. And I appreciate y'all for your support, and like always, y'all keep chunking.